if you are, just looking through the telescope and you're just looking towards the future, trying to predict the future, then that's a pretty tricky thing to do. And I think it's only when there's a little bit of the stuff we talked about yesterday, is when you stand still and you have a look around and take in the system and have a systemic view, is what else are you going to see? What else are the opportunities within that? And I think in terms of that external view, I think there's two key elements, certainly in my experience and what I've thought about. And one of those key elements is your people and the external context of your people beyond the business. So in terms of learning and development, what can you do for your people outside of the business which is going to help the business? And we talked a bit about that yesterday. But I think a bigger question in terms of external context is the world we live in. And I'm sure none of you have failed to realize there's quite a lot of stuff going on in the world we live in. And so how sustainable is it for your business if there isn't an external context when you think about the world, in terms of environment, in terms of water, security, in terms of conflict, in terms of immigration? So what's the external context? There's one of my favourite quotes is by Winston Churchill. And he said, if you want to look forward and you want to look in the future, the first thing you have to do is, anybody know this? Look backwards. If you want to look forwards, the first thing you have to do is look backwards, because history has an uncanny habit of repeating itself. So I'm quite interested in Roman history myself. Anyone interested in Roman history? Yeah, a few people, yeah. Why did Rome collapse? What happened to the Roman Empire? Why did it collapse? Go on, anyone? They ran out of money? Sorry? Yeah, they had some problems with immigration, with people. Okay, some other reasons. There was an obsession with growth and expansion. Okay, and that got out of hand. There was a massive overspending, particularly on military. Huge overspending in order to try and compensate for their expansion. And there was a gradual and progressive widening of the gap between the rich and the poor. And then one of the big things that caused the revolt and ultimately the implosion was the rich setting up fiefdoms to protect their money. And if you think about some of those things in terms of what caused the collapse of the Roman Empire, it's quite interesting when you compare it with the world that we live in right now. So this is quite a philosophical, thought or ends to this conference. Did anyone see the headline yesterday about the distribution of wealth? No? A couple? Okay, so this is some latest research, and the richest 8 people, that's 8 people, the richest 8 people in the world have the same wealth as the poorest 50%. 3.5 billion people have the same wealth distribution as the richest 8. Is that sustainable? I would suggest probably not. So I think it's a really interesting question when you think about organizations. And there's a lot of that external stuff going on. Really good conversations the last 2 days. But I think some of the bigger questions for organizations and the bigger challenges in the future is that external context. And I think some of this, we talked about the helicopter view or the 50,000-foot view. I actually think you need to get in a spaceship and go into low Earth orbit and have a really good look at what's going on when you're actually developing some of the strategies around engaging people and how it aligns with your organizations. CSR is one way that organizations do try and connect with the external world. How many folks have taken part in some sort of CSR activity within your organization? Yeah, it's corporate social responsibility, I'm sure everybody knows. And some of that can work really well, and I think some of it can be a little bit rubbish from my experience of what I've seen. I think one example I thought is if you eat donuts every day for a year and on one day you have an apple, it doesn't make you healthy. Okay? And that's a little bit of my experience of some CSR agendas within organizations. There's some sort of, well, let's just do something for a day and we'll all feel great and we'll carry on and make loads more money and everything's fine because we went and painted the wall in the school and weren't they happy? Lovely. That I've seen that happen quite a lot. There's some other ways of thinking about that, and there's initiatives that I've heard now called CSV. Anyone heard of this? Okay, CSV is creating shared value. So it's redefining CSR and actually thinking, well, how does a business create shared value with communities and the world outside of our businesses? And in terms of integrating that into learning and development, one organization that I know of, and I didn't work on it, but I know the guy that helped set it up from the community, the partner side, is HSBC. And HSBC have a really well-proven program where they partner with the sustainability charity Earthwatch, and they take most of their leaders through a program where they're developing leadership skills, all the things we're talking about, but they do it in the context of sustainability in the Earthwatch locations. And HSBC have done this for years. So they've completely embedded a sustainability agenda within their learning and development agenda in the organisation. It's a really good example. You can go on the Earthwatch website, and there's a whole load of stuff on there about it. It's really worth having a look at to get you to think about what are the ways of integrating this if we want to do that. There was a lot of questions when I woke up this morning. Okay, so another question I thought was, the question is, what do your people really need? So when you're designing learning and development, what do your people really need? If you think about the world we live in, surrounded by uncertainty and ambiguity, who knows what's going to happen? Everyone keeps saying last year was absolutely crazy. So what do people really need? What they probably really need is, as much as they can, a sense of direction, a sense of connection, a sense of community, something about bringing people back together. And how do we actually do that? And how does your learning and development agenda actually help with that? How does it help bring people back together and connect them, both in the business and outside the business? And I think one of the ways that having an external context can help with your workforce and your employees is around connecting with values. Is I don't believe it's actually probably ethical or realistic to expect that you can impose values on people to come to work to live by. If you've got an external context with some sort of partner or an environmental or sustainability agenda, you can engage with people's personal values. So they're actually coming to work, and the way they are learning is engaging with their values. And it's a very different way of looking at how to engage people. So how can you engage with people's individual values that aligns with what you're trying to do as a business? There's an organisation in London called Escape the City. Anybody heard of them? Okay, and this all comes down to purpose. It's often this thing we talk about is what's our own purpose, what's the purpose of the business. And Escape the City sprung up, and it exists because so many people who work in organisations have completely had enough of going to work and not feeling they've got a purpose. And if you haven't got a purpose, it's probably because you're not engaging with your values. So Escape the City exists to help people escape. And it's quite an interesting thing. So as an organisation, if you can connect with people's values, I think you can help people do less escaping. The last couple of questions I would leave you with is, when you're designing learning development, take that low Earth orbit view and think, actually, what does the world really need? How can your organisation engage with that? And how can you tailor your learning and development to engage with that and what the world actually needs to make a difference? Thank you.
Thank you, Scotty.
If you've got an external context to get you to think about, in terms of learning and development, what could people beyond the business? If you